Mr. Bennett, are we all set?
We are all set recording.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Jill.
Frank Carini.
Here.
Cheryl Cerniglia.
Here.
Leah Schreiber-Johnson.
Here.
Amy Millett.
Here.
Mark Verhalen.
Here.
Darren Gabowski.
Here.
Jane Eichhoff.
Here.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our meeting on July 27th here. Dan, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I did. I would just ask that we be very diligent about muting our mics when we're not speaking tonight so that we don't create any feedback or we can hear one another.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go into the committee meeting public input part. All the information is on this yellow attachment or sheet. And I do have someone that wants to approach the board. Is Terry Grogan available?
So I think Terry's over in the remote viewing room. He's going to go ahead when Mr. Bennon can get him set up. Public comment is 3 minutes per participant and 30 total minutes.
Correct. Start at 6:01.
Terry, whenever you're ready, you can go right ahead.
All right, good evening. Thanks again for hosting another board meeting. I know they're on the schedule, but so I wanted to comment about the email that was sent to staff on July 22nd from Superintendent Earl regarding specifically the last part where staff members who are still not comfortable returning next year, or if their doctor says they should not return, that the district gets some notice of that on or before July 31st. And we understand the teachers, the OCEA, the teachers union, understands the need for staffing appropriately. But the part that we have a concern about is the timeline when the district has not formally announced their position. So I have a petition here, an electronic petition that we circulated, and I have over 200 signatures on the petition. The staff of the Oak Creek Joint School District has been asked to notify the district of their intention to take a leave of absence or retire from their position before the district has even solidified their own plans for a safe and responsible return to school in the fall. We, the undersigned, have serious concerns about making such a decision without having more information. Therefore, we are petitioning the district to extend the July 31st, 2020 deadline to 1 week after the board has a formal vote and announce the plan for a safe and responsible return to school to the community and the staff. Additionally, we're concerned about the fact that, if things change, that people might be locked into taking a leave that they don't need. For instance, if they take a leave thinking they're going to be face-to-face and things change and they can go virtual, and that's a safe option for them, that they can't, as it's worded, as it's been explained to us, that they're not able to then come back and be employed. You can understand that this will be a huge financial impact to many families who choose an option like that. They'd be responsible for their own health insurance costs, understandably. And we just think with such a big impact that some flexibility in the timeline would be granted once you all make your final decision. Thank you. I can get this over to you, however it's appropriate.
Terry, you can leave it with Chris in there and I can collect it later. Appreciate you coming in to comment on this relatively unique set of options available to staff here in Oak Creek.
Thank you.
Anybody else that'd like to approach the board? Not only in our district office, maybe anyone at the 9th grade center.
Yep, I have 2 public commenters here.
Okay, just limited 3 minutes per minute, but go ahead. If you can state your name and address.
All right, good evening. My name is Christy Yang. My address is 2551 East Fenway Drive in Oak Creek here. And I'd like to share my comments as it relates to returning to school for the children this fall. As a single parent, the greatest burden for me and my family would be the consequences of one or both of my school-age children becoming severely ill from COVID-19. My children's education is critical to their success, and they need structure and an education they can only get in a classroom. In recognizing how vulnerable my family can be due to the exposure or illness by COVID and the importance of classroom instruction, I ask that the school board offer more than the traditional face-to-face option. In this day and age, it is unacceptable that a hybrid option isn't offered, but for medical reasons or whatnot. The students have a right to have a quality education. Moreover, I think that this has all caught us off guard, but if we work diligently together, we should be able to offer more than the face-to-face option, which is critical and important for our children's success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And someone
We have
else.
one more.
Okay.
Hi, this is Kelly Yang, and my residence is 1206 West Riverside Drive. I saw the latest email about offering virtual learning, and I see that it's been stressed that you either go with face-to-face or virtual learning for the rest of the school year. I am here to ask for more flexibility in that there be evaluation periods throughout, allowing parents to switch between the 2 options based on need rather than being locked into one option or the other.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Helm, do you have anyone else?
Over here.
I'm sorry.
That's all the commenters we have over here.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Going back to action items, number 5 is personnel. Do we have a motion? Any discussion? I do like to say one thing. It's I do want to say congratulations. There's a couple of on the employment section that came through our school district, not only on elementary, middle, and high school. And it's nice to see that they worked hard and are coming back to their city and working for us. So congratulations to several people on this list.
And we're very proud when we can hire alumni.
Any other questions, discussion?
Also, I guess I would like to say thank you and congratulations to the retiree, Cynthia Kostic. She's been in our district a long time and has done a wonderful job in the music department. 31
years. Thank you, Cynthia.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. All right. All in favor, say aye.
I asked who motioned. I didn't hear it.
So Niglia made the motion, and I think it was Jane Eichhoff second.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll do that again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay.
I see. And 1 abstention from Mr. Grabowski.
Got it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll say that again. We had 1 abstention from Mr. Grabowski for the record.
All right, number 6 on the agenda, 2021 and 22 school year calendar. Do we have a motion?
So Niglia moves to approve.
Is there a second?
Eichhoff seconds.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Updates to the employee handbook 2020-2021. Motion?
So Niglia moves to approve.
Eichhoff will second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passed. Number 8, 2020-21 school year elementary, middle school start and end time adjustment. Do you have a motion?
So Nigley moves to approve.
Dykoff seconds.
Any discussion?
I just want to add a reminder that given the busing scenario of trying to disinfect high-touch areas in between tiers and adjust routes to try to limit kids standing at a particular route and piling onto a bus will just cost us a little bit of additional time. Right Way is pretty confident. 5 minutes at the elementary, 10 at the middle school should be able to suffice. So that would be both AM route and then PM routes in return. So this is, again, just for this particular calendar year for our students, and then we would revert back to the previous calendar, assuming the world is back in a more normal state at that particular time.
And Andy, should any other adjustments or changes need to be made, we'd come back to the board again to discuss that again, correct?
Yes, thank you. Yep. Should something become changed between now and the start of school, certainly we would bring that back for an adjustment. Thank you for reminding me.
And we didn't think any adjustments would need to be made at the high school level.
High school starts in the morning, so we can send those buses out as soon as possible in the morning, and they're the first ones to get picked up in the afternoon, so no adjustment for their start or end time.
Okay.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passed. Number 9, updates to student handbooks for 2020-21. Motion?
So Nigley moves to approve.
Dykoff seconds.
Any discussion?
So I would ask Assistant Superintendent Kutark to highlight the elements outlined in this update, please.
Can't
She's
hear
not
you.
on.
Thank you. So I think a couple things to note is that this revision to the handbook will go in place for at any time we are in person at school. And the key highlights are that face coverings would be required of students at times when physical distancing is not possible. We would encourage and schedule breaks so that no student has to have that face mask on throughout the day without any breaks. So we'll make sure that we are encouraging those breaks at different times throughout the day. There will be exceptions made if and when needed for certain groups of students, and that's per CDC guidelines. And that we would also require them when students are riding the bus, both to and from or one way, if that's the case.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. That motion's passed. Informational items, school nutrition, local wellness policy, the assessment.
So this is something that we see on a revolving basis. It's a little bit more of a return to normalcy sort of update, but it's still required at this point. Lisa's going to talk us through some of the stuff we've done to date and some things we're going to continue to focus on going forward.
So over the past couple years, Superintendent Nerdle has formed a committee and had ongoing scorecards, if you will, to determine our preparedness for school wellness. This is the third year of those committees, so we were required to submit a triennial assessment. Our district is very focused on nutrition and has a great partnership with TAHR. So under the executive summary, those have continued to be the goals for our district. And after our triennial assessment, you'll see some of the strengths, and I'll just highlight a few. Like our partnership with TAHR has allowed us to really analyze our food service and the nutrition that we provide our students. We've collaborated with our school stores to ensure that we're following all the guidelines. And then we're also partnering with our PTO presidents because of the importance of our children getting physical activity. So we were about to invite Phy-Ed teachers and health teachers in our March meeting. So we met monthly to kind of talk about what would that playground activity, what would be the structured activities in the classroom for brain breaks. So you see those as being areas to improve on that I believe our committee continuing on for fall will focus on. So we've done very well. We continue to highlight some positive things and things to work on. So
I'll note that Assistant Superintendent Kujava did a great job of picking this up when I had to put it down, and Assistant Superintendent Kotarek is going to follow along where we've been working and help break through to the next level on this going forward. So
It's because Frank's mic is on.
Oh, I got to talk in 2 seconds. Thanks. Okay. Next is the discussion of policy 860, visitors to school, policy 353, school volunteers.
So again, these policies are currently in place. I highlighted the area on visitors in schools that are already allow our building administrators or any of our administrators to refuse permission for parents or other members of the public to visit. So based on some of the recommendations from the local health department and some of our survey results, we will invoke this authority and not have outside visitors pass through into our schools and classrooms. If there needs to be a meeting with the principal, that person will come into the main office and will follow all protocols. And then for school volunteers, so this is the exact narrative from the policy. The second sentence, we shall have the right to decline the services of a volunteer based on criminal background checks, results, and or past behaviors or actions in schools. So I'm recommending, or we're recommending, that we invoke our authority not to have school volunteers just for the safety of our students. So it would be those last 4 words, the action in schools. So there would not need to be a policy revision. We would just follow these a little bit tighter than we have in the past.
And this would actually also allow us to return to normalcy relatively quickly when we're in a position to do so, because we don't have to alter any existing policy now or in the future. We would just be able to change how they're applied at the sites based on the latest, most current information available to us. Am I correct in summing that up, Assistant Superintendent Kay?
Yes.
My question, I guess, I think this is a good idea in theory, I believe, but if we do end up back in school, might there be a need in some classrooms for extra support that maybe a volunteer could be helpful for? So would that be on a case-by-case basis?
There may, and if we don't alter the language too dramatically, we'd still allow principals to be able to make that objective site-based decision.
Okay. And then I guess I just want to make sure that if we do go back to school, that we just at least let parents know that we're changing this, so that it's maybe not a total shock to them.
So we have some of the final communications leading up until the opening days of school flagged for your typical voice of the principal welcome back messages. It's a great opportunity to explain very thoughtfully, right? Like, I don't particularly like how strong this language is, when the reality is we're doing this for the benefit of everyone, right? That would allow the principal that ability to write it the way we would say it, like you or I would tell our neighbor, right?
Okay, next on the agenda, number 12, long-term disability insurance.
Okay, we're going to ask Troy and Andy to take the helm here.
Thank you, Dan. The short version, hopefully you had a chance to read it, wasn't a real long report. Our insurance carrier is proposing an 81% increase, very close to doubling our premium. Both Andy and my goal were to try and keep it flat. So in order to do that, we're proposing a few changes to our long-term disability policy. We're proposing that we switch carriers, number one. We're proposing that during the first year of your disability, instead of 90%, you receive 80%. And in the second year of your disability, instead of receiving 80%, you receive 70%. And then lastly, the benefit would now be capped at 3 years, meaning you couldn't receive additional payments beyond your third year of disability. As I had mentioned in the report, generally people qualify for a WRS or Social Security disability. In our two cases that are really driving our rates so high, neither person qualified. We don't know the reasons, but they didn't. So that's what we're looking at. Our effective date of the policy is 9/1. We just received about 9 different options that Andy and I looked at. We thought this was the simplest one, the easiest one, and it keeps our rates flat, which again was our goal.
I'd just like to add 2 things. One, changing to Madison National Life is not like changing from United Health to WA Trust. Most members have no idea who our long-term disability provider is. It's really like apples to apples. It's just who manages the case. The second piece would be the 2 individuals who are currently, that Troy mentioned, on the long-term disability. They would be grandfathered into our current plan and would be allowed to stay on. This would be active as of 9/1/2020 and would only affect new claims as of that particular date.
And you may not know this now, and I apologize for not sending the question earlier. What are other districts around us doing? Do they have kind of these similar parameters? And if you don't know that now, if you could have it to us by the next time when we vote on this, that'd be great.
Long-term disability is typically capped anywhere from 3 to 5 years, depending on the district. In West Dallas, West Milwaukee, we actually capped it at 2 years. We had a lifetime plan before that, so we had people who were on long-term disability for like 20-some years on our plan. And so looking at a 3-year cap, as Troy mentioned, almost everybody makes it to their WRS pension or is getting a Social Security benefit at that point. It's a very small margin who are still like on a fine line and trying to work between that Social Security benefit and the potential end of a 3-year long-term disability. I would guess in our plan, we've probably never had anybody that's come close to not reaching that, except for the 2 individuals that they're right on the border right now.
I guess I was looking more at the percentages that we're going down to.
Oh, yeah, I would say it's closer to 2/3 is what they like to use. The idea with the long-term insurance, when you're dealing with carriers who do this, is you don't want to incentivize long-term disability. And so they typically find something that is, it's kind of at a point where I have to choose what I want to do kind of thought process. So if we kept it at 100%, there is no incentive to return to work because I'm getting paid to sit at home. Now I'm probably truly disabled in some capacity, but it doesn't mean I can't go somewhere else and do a different job. And so, if I work in construction, I might not be able to do construction, but there's probably something else I can do. And so you want to put it at a price point that provides some income for people while they work through that, but you don't want to incentivize not returning to work in some capacity.
Andy, I got a question. I was thinking kind of like Cheryl's side of this, like the first year dropping it down to 70%, and then the first and second year at 70%, and then going third year after to 60.
We could look at that. We would see a price reduction at that point, and so this plan keeps us pretty close to flat. It's like cents per 1,000. That'll be a difference, so negligible.
If you look nationwide wise, the 60 to 70% is like an average right now.
Correct. Yep.
So just something to look at.
Andy, is there currently a cap? Are we just changing the cap, or is our current plan?
We do not have a cap on our years of ability to remain in long-term disability, so we'd be adding a cap.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, next on the agenda is, oh, I'm sorry.
Regional comps.
Yep.
We can do that.
Yep.
just as a reminder, so do you want them for the next meeting? Because we do have we have to know by September 1 what we're doing, which gives us the next board meeting as the business meeting.
Well, let's see what's possible, right? We have a pretty close network. Let's see what we can do. So.
All right, next on the agenda is 2021 preliminary budget annual meeting.
So the budget that you're going to see tonight is what's going to be presented at the annual meeting. I've provided it in a format that's very familiar to us. It takes us from January, where we were, to a board meeting in April we talked about. May 20th, or May of 2020, we brought it back for our second preliminary budget, and we ended up approving that in June, which allowed us again to cut purchase orders and get our fiscal year started. What you're seeing tonight is the updated iteration of that. I'm just going to take us down to the middle of that document, which puts us in the black at about $557,000. It's important to note that the only raises incurred in there are the 1% teacher compensation model, which gets our first, second year teachers into that next bracket and our third year teachers up into that next echelon. It includes a 4% healthcare increase, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the 2019-20 year. What it does not hold is any of our virtual spending. So currently we have 6 teachers on staff who will help us with some sort of virtual presentation of students. That is not included in here. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in 2019-20. But this does include some of our upgraded needs in technology. So we were able to add a couple $100,000 into our technology budget throughout the process of the last couple of months in how our revenues and expenses are shaking out. One area that I want to note, you'll notice our West Middle School, East Middle School lighting fund balance restoration was moved to 0. So that's typically scheduled for $90,343. And again, I'll talk about that in the 2019-20 budget, why that was able to move to 0. So we're at a really positive place. I want to reiterate, there's a couple of big pieces of things we have to watch for. One is the budget repair bill. So as we all know, last week, Governor Evers asked for another about $250 million budget cut from the state budget. In this round, schools are expected to be affected in some capacity, and we don't know what that is. Both Dan and I sit in multiple calls where they talk about something happening after the election. So that's going to push us after that first week in November, well past the time that the board approves the budget. The second piece is what the next biennium looks like. So we're still, as we know, unemployment went up last week. And so our state income tax, which is one of the biggest providers of funding for the state revenue, that's going to see a hit as well again. So it's already been hit since March. It's going to see another larger hit. So the next biennium is a big piece that we have to watch and really help plan for the future. So again, at this point, I think it's prudent for us to take a look and say we're $557,000 in the black, which is positive, but we have 6 teachers on staff that are not in here. We do have CARES Act funding, so you know that was part of the first stimulus. For us, that's about $440,000. So that would cover those 6 teachers. We haven't exactly said how we're going to account for that. We know we're going to have funding though, and we know we have the dollars covered. So it's just a matter of when we apply for that. But again, it's taking a look at where do our revenues and where do our expenses fall and when is going to be the best use for us to receive those dollars. But again, prudent for us to wait and decide if we want to provide employee raises until we know more about what's going to happen to us. So our budget will have a couple of changes between now and when we approve it in October. So again, this is what we'll see at the annual meeting. Between now and October, though, our teaching staff will come back and they'll decide whether they're taking a family health or a single health or not taking any health. So we'll be able to actually account for that. Right now, we're estimating where we fall with that. So we'll actually get that adjustment. We know that while we had some public comment tonight, currently by 7:31, we'll have decided whether a teacher or teachers or other staff members are going to take some sort of sabbatical or retire. So that might have an impact on this particular piece, whether that's 7:31 or that gets extended. That will particularly have an effect on where we are today as well. Those are the 2 biggest things to watch between now and October. We will also be tracking our healthcare spend. So we'll talk a little bit more about that with 2019-20 as well. But healthcare did very well. But as I mentioned in the past, most of the electives that people had between March and June are just going to get shoved into our next fiscal year. So starting in July and then moving their way forward. So we know that that's going to happen at some point. We're anticipating it happening the later half of 2020 and then the beginning of 2021 through June of 2021. And so we have to be cautious of that as well. So while healthcare did pretty well in the previous year, to not provide any sort of premium increase would be short-sighted on our part, knowing that our expenses are just going to get backloaded into this year. And so as I mentioned in May and June, I take a look at healthcare normally on a yearly basis, but this year it's really 2019-20 and 2021 as one group rather than trying to separate them out. It's trying to look at them as a 2-year bunch and then comparing that to where we think we're going to stand. So we're in a really good place right now with this particular budget, but we have some potential pitfalls coming that this will help us to cushion. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about how we fared with 2019-20 and how that relates to this as well in, I think, 1 or 2 of the bullet points on the agenda.
Any questions for Andy? Do you want to go into the budget hearing?
Yeah, so the budget hearing agenda and the annual meeting agenda come before the board for just a review. So if there's anything that we think we want to change, but these typically roll over from year to year. So the first one that I have up here is our budget hearing notice and agenda. Notice we're going to be meeting at Edgewood Elementary. We'll have it in the gym. We should have an occupancy permit within the next couple days, so we'll be able to utilize that space. We will be able to meet in there and socially distance as well, given our normal turnout. If 150 people show up, we're going to have to figure out what to do there. But our typical turnout, 10, 20 people, will be able to easily social distance in there and be able to hold our voting as normal. So as you see, we'll have a budget presentation, public hearing where citizens can comment, and an adoption of the preliminary budget. And then I will just pull up the annual meeting agenda so you can see that as well. So the annual meeting, a little bit different. We're going to have to elect a chairperson. We'll have the minutes from the previous year. I'll work with Leah on the treasurer's report. Dan will give an overview. Typically, it's our strategic plan update. This year, I think, will be a little bit more tempered from strategic plan to just reminding people where we are with school approaching and probably where we are with that particular point.
A little more of a state of the state sort of conversation.
Correct. We'll adopt, at that point, our electors will be able to adopt a tax levy. Now, this is in yellow. This is from last year, so it's highlighted just as a reminder to me. I'll have to update that when the official one rolls out. We'll set board salaries and vote on those, including expenses. So if we go to a conference, if a board member goes to a conference, to pay for mileage, registration fees, hotel, whatever is assigned with that. And then we'll set a date and time for our annual meeting next year. At this time, I've proposed Carrollton Elementary because that will be up and running, totally done at that point. And then the following year, which is not part of this, I would like to see us at Cedar because that would be the next building that we have done, or the PAC. So up for debate on that. But Carrollton will be done at that particular point and ready to roll. The PAEC will most likely be done, but we'll probably be getting that ready for our back to school teacher engagement. So questions on either of these two? Any concerns with using Carrollton the following year, you can let me know and I can just make those adjustments, and then these will get posted along with Jill by Jill and along with the budget.
All right, thanks, Andy. Any other questions? All right, April to June 2020 donations.
Okay, as you can expect, this is probably going to be really small. Essentially, school was shut down all of our April through June. So we just had a couple of things, and I'll go to the Chick-fil-A one first. So Chick-fil-A donated some gift cards for our Teacher Appreciation Week, so thank you to them. I'll try not to give too many shout outs, but a Chick-fil-A sandwich is pretty good. Donors Choose. Donors Choose is one of our crowdsourcing allowable websites. Just a little history on Donors Choose. We work with them on technology. And so Chris has provided them the technology that we use. So if a teacher wanted to get a Chromebook or an iPad or a computer or a projector, they already have a list of approved items that would work right with our technology, which is kind of neat. Other things, they can go on their website, but probably the best thing about it from our standpoint is a teacher never has to receive funds like a GoFundMe page and then provide that to the district. Everything is donated to Donors Choose, and then it's sent directly to the school. I have all of our principals logged in so they can see everything that is logged in under their particular school. So Keith at Cedar Hills, when a teacher registers, has to put Cedar Hills Elementary because you have to tie it to a school. He gets an email that someone's put in something from Cedar Hills. So he can either say, yep, that's totally fine, or he can talk with the teacher and say, that's not going to be necessary for our particular school. But again, the nice thing is there's no money transaction that we've had with some other crowdsourcing websites that are out there. So it's one of the approved ones, but a teacher at Forest Ridge had put something on for Mindful Moment Superpower, and enough people donated and they were sent those supplies.
Any questions for Andy? All right, keep going, Andy. June budget report.
Okay, so I mentioned we're going to talk a little bit about 2019-20. So all in all, 2019-20 fared very well. Couple of reasons. One, essentially spending, for the most part, discretionary spending shut down in the middle of March. As we know, we had a large discussion about busing and how we were going to provide some service to Right Way in between. That we paid at 52%, so we saved about $400,000 there. But our major piece was really healthcare. We really did very well on the healthcare. But again, that is going to roll into this year, and things are just going to get transferred. So all in all, from 2019-20, we were able to add about $850,000 to our healthcare reserve, moving us to just over $1.6 million. Again, our goal is about 33%. So for us, that's about $2.7 to $2.8 million in the grand scheme of things. But for us, after 3.5 years, to be at $1.6 million is really good. When we take an entire look at our 2019-20 year revenues to expenses, we ended up in the black about $2.4 million. And again, healthcare, discretionary spending, busing, all of those things configure to do very well in there. We added some additional revenue through our focus on energy programs. So all of our LED lights and all of the revenue limit exemption programs that we're doing all ran through focus on energy, and that started coming in now. Steve, our director of buildings and grounds, has done a phenomenal job with our custodians on site in really monitoring our building usage of electricity and natural gas. And we were down about $300,000 on budgeted utilities. Now, some of that is in relation to schools not being open from March through June, so being able to have a little bit more control over that. But we still would have seen a pretty good return on that particular piece, and continues to monitor that as well, and really making sure our stuff is working right. But again, so we ended up about $2.4 million in the black. So right now, about $850,000 of that goes right back into our healthcare savings account. So now we're left with about 1.55 or somewhere around that. As I mentioned in the 2020-21 budget update, that West Middle School, East Middle School LED lights line item of $90,343 was removed. So if you recall, we did East Middle School lights, West Middle School lights, and we did the high school scoreboard by pre-funding that out of fund balance. And then we were recouping the lights through savings on energy, and then recouping the payment for the high school scoreboard through the advertising sales over the next 5 years. So we are able to completely restore fund balance for West Middle School lights, the high school scoreboard, completely refund those. And we are able to pay off 3 years of the East Middle School lights. So by paying off those items or really replenishing our fund balance, we're able to put money back into our budget for the next few years to operate. So West Middle School lights totally back in, so we don't have to worry about repaying about $40,000 each year. East Middle School lights will get us through this year and then the next biennium before we have to add that back in as a line item. And the scoreboard, again, totally done. Now, what does the scoreboard do? One, we never necessarily counted it as an expense because we've paid for it back, and we never booked that revenue against it. So now we're going to add the $70,000 of revenue from the scoreboard. We're going to add in the $90,000 of repaying LED lights, and we're back to adding about $160,000 to the budget for the next 3 years instead of pulling it out or not necessarily utilizing it to spend. So that's a really good thing. We were also able to pay our next 2 years of our non-referendum debt. So non-referendum debt counts against our general spending. Consider it like a car payment or a mortgage. It just comes out of your normal operating expenses. So we have this fiscal year 2021 paid for, and we have 21-22 paid for as well. So that's like, again, that provides us dollars this year and provides us about $350,000 of operating funds next year for that first year of the biennium. So that'll definitely be very helpful when we start taking a look at that particular financial picture. We were able to add about $500,000 to our Fund 46 account. That's going to put us up to about $1.1 million or so in that particular account. It's important to know our football field needs to get replaced next summer, and the track that goes around it. So we should be able to completely fund both of those projects out of our Fund 46 account next summer without it hitting, again, any operating dollars. And one of the pieces that I've been watching since I came on board was knowing that our football field was up in 3 to 4 years, and how are we going to pay that? Because if it comes out of operating funds, that's a big chunk of money in any 1 year. So the ability that we've been able to save for that over a few years has been very helpful. And then last but not least, that's going to leave about $250,000 of just general operating funds to move back into our fund balance. And so Dan and I have talked quite a bit about this, and we know we're going to have these unforeseen expenses that are going to come up. But one of the questions that's been asked during my time here is, when do we use fund balance, or what types of projects do we use fund balance for? Well, we already know we've used it for LED lights and the scoreboard with a repayment plan. But fund balance is also really for the one-off expense that does not have any sort of reoccurring expense with it. So if we were to say, let's do employee raises out of that, we know raises come back every year for the life of the employee that's here. It'd be like paying your energy bill at home out of your savings account. At some point, you'll delete it. It'll just cycle itself until it's empty. But the teachers that we've hired are 6 virtual teachers. They are on a 1-year non-renewing contract. There is no expectation for 21-22. If we buy a learning platform for this year for students who are going to do the virtual for a semester for a year, that's a one-off. There's no expectation of 21-22 continuing with the virtual option. So we'll have an additional $250,000 plus the $550,000 I showed from the budget. So we have about $800,000 worth of expenses that we can absorb and be at the exact same place we are today. So from our standpoint, being the administration standpoint, that's a pretty good place to be. There are other districts that are not looking at it like that. There are other districts that are looking at a whole because, one, maybe they didn't have a one-to-one structure that we have, or they don't have the ability to roll it out ready to go pretty much as we have, and they have a lot of additional expenses where we were pretty set. I mean, we have a great technology department that was really on the cutting edge and making sure we're ready to go. And we have staff who's willing to implement it and teach it and do all those things with it. And so we feel pretty confident given where we were able to end this year, or 2019-20, and how we've started this year and where we're looking, that we'll be able to weather the storm and still be in a pretty good financial place when all is said and done.
So the one thing I will note is while this picture doesn't look as bad as it could, right, had we not encountered all these troubles, right, we'd have substantial funds to do other things with, things we wish we could have done, you know, so things could be a lot bleaker. But it would have been great to see what we could have done had we not encountered COVID. So,
right,
but
correct.
Thank you, Eddie. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. My thing goes off. Sorry, having a little technology issue here. Okay. So I'd like to thank obviously Troy, Andy, Dan, and Steve for obviously working so hard throughout the year. I mean, to me, this is phenomenal news. Extremely healthy for the school district. Anyways, so I just want to say congratulations. I am. My God, that sounds adorable. Anyways, so I just want to say congratulations and thank you for working so hard. And so we really appreciate it being diligent, obviously. And obviously, we're going through some tough times right now. Obviously, with COVID, we're going through uncertain times.
Hang on.
And
Just
so,
1 second.
again,
Let
thank
us
you for
finish.
all your hard work. So we really appreciate it.
So I'll just say to sum up, like, thank you,
Any other
Andy,
comments,
for being
questions?
as creative and diligent as you've been throughout this entire
Besides
process.
hearing echoing.
I think I asked some pretty challenging
All right,
questions
upcoming
pretty much whenever I
school
want
board
to storm
meeting
into his
agenda.
office. So thank
Okay.
you, Andy. I think we're back in real time here. Okay. Frank, I'm going to just jump right to the review of upcoming school board meetings on the tentative agenda because I think my mic is in real time and everyone can hear me right now. Okay. So forecasting going forward, we have another board meeting on August 10th where we're going to talk about long-term disability policy renewal changes again, incorporating some of the feedback that various board members have asked for this evening. We're going to talk about school safety. Mrs. Reed and Mr. Thielen will walk us through our safety plan update. That's a typical hallmark of the summer. We'll have some new faces presenting it this year. We'll talk seclusion and restraint, and we'll talk money again for the July budget report. I'll also note there is a very real potential for a special meeting of the board that would fall in this period of time too. We just haven't set a date for it or talked about that at length at this point, but that would fall during this period of time too. It just doesn't appear on this sheet of paper. Late August, committee meeting, budget hearing, annual meeting, immediately following the budget hearing. Andy outlined that very well for us. So these are some things we know we're going to see, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we ended up having to talk about a couple other things as we've been reacting to quite a bit these days, as you all know full well. So but these are the things we know we're talking about. There's also the potential for a special meeting, and we might end up with some other agenda items before we're done here. These are just the things we know about. Okay. Frank, are you back in real time now? Yes.
We have a motion for adjournment.
So Niglia moves to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Grabowski seconds.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passed. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great night.
Good night. Thank you. Mr. Bennon, you can shut it down in there.